Believe it or not, but I never finished school. I chose to quit instead of to fail. Now, I'm not going to share with you today my full story from going from dropping out of high school to graduating with the university medal to getting my PhD and becoming a lecturer, because that story would take us way too long. Instead, today I want to share with you all of the study tips that I used to get there. So here are my top 10 study tips. And I would say overall that number 7 helped me the most with my assessments and number 10 helped me the most with my exams. Number 1, make a degree plan. I made a plan for my entire degree, and that helped lighten my workload for each semester and guaranteed that I finished my degree on time. In fact, my favorite semester was my last one. My very last semester of my entire degree, I had 1 first-year subject, 1 second-year subject, and 1 third-year subject, and that was it. Because I'd moved my subjects around to lighten my load. So first of all, you want to look at what core subjects you have to do, and especially any that are prerequisites for a subject that comes in later years, for example, 2nd year or 3rd year. And you want to lay those out and make sure that you can do them in the correct year. Some core subjects you can do in later years, so you just need to check which ones you can move around a little bit and which ones you have to do in a given year to make sure that you're allowed to enter the subject in 2nd year or 3rd year. Then you need to fill in those gaps in your plan with the elective subjects. And I know it can be easier to get through a semester or a year of university before you pick those because you're not sure what you want to do. But by making a plan, you take that stress off yourself and lighten the workload, and you can always change that plan later if you decide that you want to go in a slightly different direction. And that's certainly what I ended up doing. Now, you can do this a couple of different ways, and it will depend on your specific degree or discipline what type of subjects are offered. But the first way you can do this is by choosing intensives. So they're subjects that are offered either over just a week or over a couple of weeks, and they're usually offered out of semester time. So either during swap back or between semesters or a summer school. They're a great option because you immediately can remove one subject load from your semester, or you can choose to do more subjects in 1 year to speed up your total degree time. Another way you can do this is by choosing online self-paced modules as opposed to the face-to-face subjects. To give you an idea of how well this can work, I planned out my entire degree, and in some years I did 3 or 4 more subjects than what I needed to do in a given year, but it was broken up into those intensives. So sure, I had less break between semesters. In fact, in most cases I had no break, but it meant that each of my semesters I had such a lighter workload that I could take my time with my assessments and not stress so much about my study. So you are in complete control of your degree by planning it and taking the time to sit down at the outset. My gosh, what a difference it can make to your study and workload. Step 2 is to make an assessment planner. To make an assessment planner, you don't need some complicated app or a fancy notebook. All you need is a calendar app, which is on everybody's phone or computer. So it's easy to make. When you first start your semester, you should get a syllabus or a subject outline. It will be called different things depending on your university. But inside of that document, it has the most important information for you. It should tell you exactly what each of your assessment types is that you'll have due during semester, when they're due, and how much they're worth. So whether they're worth 2% or 20%. To make an assessment planner helpful, you want to put down on your calendar when it is due, what it is, and how much it is worth, because that instantly tells you how much work you should be putting into it. Then what you want to do is work backwards in time. So for example, if you have a big report due in week 5, then in week 4 you want to put something down like, I need to write that big report, and then the week before that you want to put a little reminder in your calendar that you need to research that report, and the week before that you want to put a little note that you need to start prepping that or planning and looking at what you're going to do for that report. By having those little reminders each week, it stops you from getting to the week that it's due and going, oh my gosh, I have this massive report due that I need to write and I have no time to do it because I've got all these other things on. And then that makes writing your assessments harder, let alone if that's combined in a week where you might have midterm exams or something else that you're trying to study for. So by making that assessment planner, it removes the guesswork. Every week you can just look in and go, what do I need to do this week? Okay, I have these things due and I need to start working on this big assessment. Step 3 is all about getting the best mark possible in an assessment. And that's actually important because the higher the marks are that we can get in an assessment, the lower the mark we need in our final exam to pass our subject and to get a higher grade overall, which is super helpful. And the way that I did that was by using my assignment instructions to make a checklist. So for each of the major assignments that you have, scientific reports, literature reviews, and essays, your lecturer should give you a set of instructions or a marking rubric that tells you exactly what they want. Now, the trick with that is that it's often in university language that can be really unhelpful or hard to understand. You know, they use words like summarize this and then synthesize that and critically analyze and examine this, and nobody really explains what those terms mean or how they're different. So what I've done is I've created a PDF for you that steps you through how to take your assignment instructions and turn it into a checklist and to make it make sense for you. So that when you sit down to do a major report, essay, whatever it might be, you don't have to think about how you need to structure it. You can just look at the content that you need for it. So it takes all the guesswork out for you. And I've put the link in the description below for you so that you can download that. Number 4 is actually really important. Don't waste time making to-do lists. And I used to, especially in the beginning, I made a list for things that I needed to do for a week and for a day, and then I would spend time checking them, what I needed to do, doing it, and then coming back and ticking it off and feeling really good about myself. What I realized was all I was doing was giving myself a little bit of a sugar hit, a bit of feeling of self-satisfaction whenever I got to cross something off. But actually the cumulative amount of time I was wasting on making my list and then checking it regularly and then crossing it off was just ridiculous. Instead, I completely stopped using a to-do list and just used my assessment planner. And that told me everything I needed to know, because the assessment planner tells you what's most urgent and what's most important, because instantly you can see in your calendar week what is due, so you know you have to do it. And then it also tells you what's most important because you've popped down how much that assessment is worth. Obviously, something that is worth 20% is going to be more important than something that is worth 2%. So your assessment planner already has all that information that you need. Your brain, somewhere in the back, already knows what you have to do, what's the most urgent thing, and it's probably nagging you if you're anything like me. And it helps to just get in and start getting it done rather than wasting time on to-do lists. Number 5 is to make digital notes. In the first semester of my first year, I really wasted a lot of time handwriting all my notes out. And then I quickly realized when it came to studying for exams, my gosh, I'd made my life so much harder than it needed to be. And I quickly learned for second semester to digitize everything. And I did that as I went. So for each class, I made my notes on my laptop sitting in class. And that made it much easier for me because I also wasn't wasting time out of class putting my notes on the computer. I did it at the same time as listening to the lecturer. It can be easy to sit in lecture and not take notes or take little handwritten notes, especially if we're in practical classes like chemistry or physics. It can be easier to take handwritten notes. But having digital notes will speed up all of your assessments and it will make you more efficient when it comes time to studying for your exams. The best thing about digital notes is that they are savable and searchable. So number 1, you don't lose them, right? You're not looking through pieces of paper trying to find what you wrote on lecture 3 in Earth Science 101. It's on your computer, and I always recommend saving it to at least one other location in the cloud, for example, OneDrive. So that way, if your computer dies or your hard drive dies, which I have seen plenty of times, you know you have another copy somewhere and you haven't lost everything. Then the other side of that is that they're searchable, right? So you can just Control or Command F anytime you need to find some information out. That really speeds up your assessments because in most cases, every assessment will be linked somehow to the content that you're learning in class. So you'll have already done some work on that and you can find it easily if you've got those notes digitized on your computer. Then when it comes time for exams, you can quickly turn all of those notes into study notes. You can do that manually yourself by making things like flashcards or spider diagrams, or you can use ChatGPT to help you. For example, you can just drop all of your notes into ChatGPT and ask it to create a series of questions based on your notes, and then you can sit there and just start answering them and looking back at your notes when you need help. So having that digitized component really helps speed up both sides of things. It makes you more efficient as a student. It certainly helped me. Number 6 is do you. Everybody tells us to use the Pomodoro technique and to meditate and to take our time and to have some sunshine. And while all those bits of advice can be helpful, the hard part about university is that it's hard work. And sometimes we just need brute force to get everything done on time. There was one point where I had 37 assessments due in just a 5-week period. If I had taken the time to sit down and use a timer system like the Pomodoro technique to get things done, I would never have finished. So you have to work out what works for you. And for me, that was brute force and not looking at the bigger picture because it was so overwhelming. I looked at my assessment planner to see what was due next, and I just did that. And I didn't think about anything else. I didn't look at anything else. I focused in and honed in on that one assessment and got it done. Once I had finished it, I would then take a break. Now, for me, that break was going for a run because that's what I do to relax. It helps me de-stress. And then I would come back and I would look at what the next thing was, and I would sit down and I would start that. And I would just tick things off that way. What was due next? Do it. Finish it. What was next? Do it. Finish it. That worked for me. I'm not going to lie, it was stressful and it was hard, but it's what got me through. If I had tried to squeeze in all these other things that people recommend, there is no way that I would have finished everything on time and got the marks that I got. So figure out what works for you and run with that. Number 7 is action over perfection. I realized after a couple of semesters that I was wasting a lot of time by editing my work before I'd finished a complete draft. And that was the same for both assessments and in my exams. So I realized I'd write like a sentence and then I would try and fix it. And I didn't even realize that I was doing it on purpose, but I was sitting there and going, oh, that doesn't sound quite right, and trying to change it and change it and change it. And it took me forever to finish one assessment. As soon as I set this rule in motion, for me, my assessment writing process sped up incredibly. So my rule is no editing until a complete draft is written. For example, when I'm writing a scientific report, I would write my methods section without stopping, without fixing anything. I'd write my results section without stopping. Then when I had finished an entire draft, then I would come back and edit it and look at it and read it and fix it. And this is really important because one of the hardest things in university is finishing everything on time, right? And then we want to get the best grade we possibly can. The first step in finishing everything on time is having a complete draft. If you can finish a complete draft relatively quickly, then you have more time to come back and make it better, which then means you've finished on time and you're more likely to get a better grade. And then that fed into my exams because it meant when I sat down in my exam and you're trying to write those long answer formats, that you just go. You don't even stop to look at what you're writing, and you can just get a whole lot more down on the paper. Number 8 is to use past exams to study. This isn't available for every class, but for a lot of classes, your lecturer will make past exams available. Now, there's 2 benefits out of this. One is obviously that you're getting free questions, right? So that you can practice in like an exam format. So you can sit down, you can have a past exam paper, and you can set your timer for 3 hours or 2 hours or however long your exam is and practice and do those questions. But here's the big bonus. Most lecturers don't change their exam questions. They might year to year, but you'll notice that they'll take questions from 2 years ago or 3 years ago and they'll reuse them. So by getting access to any previous exams, there's a high chance that you'll be exposed to a question that will be on your exam. With that, once you've completed those exams, you can also ask your lecturer for feedback on the answers that you put. So that then tells you whether you're getting them right or not, which is super helpful. I would say the only time that this can be slightly less helpful is if you have a new lecturer. So for example, if all of the past exams are from one lecturer and a new lecturer started teaching that course, then it's highly likely they're going to change the format or the questions. But doing those past exams will still help you study. It's a great study technique. Number 9 is to go to everything. In university, we can get a little bit bombarded by all of the classes. So lectures, practicals, tutorials, clinics. And it can be hard to get to everything. And sometimes it can be easy to convince ourselves not to go to something because it's not compulsory, right? We don't have to turn up for everything. We don't have to sit in class for lectures. Sometimes we can just watch them online. The thing is that makes our life harder in the long run. If we can go to everything, we're hearing that information firsthand. And then we can also ask our lecturer or tutor any questions that we might have at the end of the session. So it means we're exposed to the material in multiple different ways, not just by watching a video at home, which can be harder to listen to, harder to stay focused in. as opposed to when we're sitting in class and we're directly looking at the lecturer and able to walk up to them at the end and ask questions. It's just something that I found really helpful, was to go to everything and to stay the entire time. So that was the other side of it. If I had a practical, even if I finished my work, I tried to stay the whole time and just finalize it completely so that I could then submit it. It stopped me from wasting more time on my assessments out of class time, and that I could then use for studying. And finally, number 10. This really helped with my exams, and it really helped me understand the content of each of the subjects. What I would do is I would make all of my study notes, which was really easy because I had all my Digitise notes throughout semester. And I would read through it and I would make a note of anywhere that I had a question. Like if I read something like, I really don't understand this, it's just not making sense to me. And I would circle it or highlight it and just make a note to ask a question. I then contacted my lecturer for that class and asked to have some one-on-one time with them. Most lecturers are busy, but they will always make time for you if you ask, because that's what they're there for. They want to help you, and they're incredibly helpful when they can see that you want to do as well as you possibly can. So I would set up a one-on-one time and I would go and sit in there with them and I would run through those questions with them so that I could understand them. It put me a huge jump ahead when it came to my exams. It meant that I knew that I understood all of the content. And if you can understand all of it, it's so much easier to retain and remember that information and recall it later in your exam. That made the biggest difference for me.